That's because she's doing too much and she doesn't focus.
Well, I don't know. She's scatterbrained in a sense, but she gets things done, and
Yeah.
she has a hard time working with all these engineers who most of them are very helpful and friendly and like trying to solve problems.
Yes.
And they all respect each other.
Yes.
But there's a few in there who are just out to make as much money as they can.
In AXT?
Yes, even within AXT, there's
Really?
it's quite a big company.
Yes, I know,
There are
but
about 60 people. So they're not all nice and friendly, and they sound nice, and they can be civil and sensible.
yeah.
But they're just like Protestants and Catholics.
Yeah.
They persist in ignoring the first commandment and basing their lives on later commandments.
Yeah, well, whatever suits them.
Well, yes, but they can't do that anymore. It's weapons of mass destruction and audience of millions of people.
Well, this is where
totally unstable.
this is where Richard and Christina and Paolo need to put their feet down or their foot down and actually.
Yeah, but they've got it well, but they can't fix the problem. The problem is that it's just every case gets almost equal treatment in the news bulletins when whether one person gets stabbed in a supermarket or
Yes.
something, or Netanyahu kills 5,000 people
Yep.
with bombs.
Yep.
And they get equal weight. And
Well-
most people can't stand it and can't understand it. And there is no understanding of it, is it?
I think that's the
It's-
media doing that
Yeah,
because
of course.
yesterday there was more exposure about the idiot that
drove his car
mowed
into
down
Liverpool.
into
Yeah,
Liverpool
well, that's a good
football
example.
thing.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And there wasn't anything about Netanyahu.
That's right, but they've gone quiet on Netanyahu because they think there may be a chance there's going to be a change soon because some of the other countries are agreed to cooperate and give some live weapons to
To the
Australia,
to yeah, Australia is one of them,
yes,
and France and Britain.
yes, that's right, and they're working together to try and make logical sense, which makes sense because they're all English speaking and they get the nuances of what's going on and they what's really happening, and there are good, honest people on both sides.
They are, but United States is still calling the shots in many respects.
Well, it is the most powerful country, and it's got a crazy guy leading it.
Yes.
And that's something the world, we should have developed political systems that didn't do that. And it shouldn't be possible for one person to
Yep.
get the world into the mess it's in.
Or
We've got to wipe out people. That's what I keep saying. We've got to get the total population. But that won't solve it completely.
no, because the people that actually die are those that are not as influential, and those that do survive will be the Donald Trumps of the world.
Well, not only them, but the honest right-wing people, not as smart as the left-wing people, and they're equally honest, and they've both got valid arguments. They're
Yeah.
saying that it's ridiculous that we let a bunch of people in. I mean, this idea that everyone deserves to live in their homeland if they want to is not a tenable thing because the human race has never been in that state.
No. And if you are talking about Indonesia, there's about 200 islands that are going to disappear in the next
Well, that's
15, 20 years.
Well, that's clear, but it's probably already too late to stop that happening.
That's right.
And so I don't think it's worth arguing about it anymore. But the people who are currently in power are still piling up personal wealth
Oh, yeah.
if they can, because they're short-sighted.
Well,
and they don't care if they.
Donald Trump is doing that now by insider trading because he knows when he's going to backflip,
Yes.
so they invest in the stock market.
Yes. Yeah, well, the whole concept of this stock market ruling the world is ridiculous.
I mean, that was the driving force for imperialism in the first
and
place.
it's also what was wrong with Kamala, what's her name?
Kamala
Kamala, yes.
Harris,
Harris, she was.
who was in Australia a couple of days ago,
Uh-huh.
espousing real estate
Yeah.
of all things.
Well, she's a right-wing person. She always was, but she wasn't a liar. So not obviously. So that's good.
Yeah.
Anyway, the trip to Portugal
Yes.
is for the kids. It's a once in a lifetime chance. Because
Yeah.
within another 4 years, some of them will have found partners or found some serious
Yeah.
jobs that they want to get on.
Yeah.
Because and luckily they're all smart enough. They're not directly going to be a burden. They're going to try and do things as well as we can. It's
Well,
just
unless they become like Jim, form a business of his own, and then he's got the luxury of traveling around the world whenever he feels like it.
well,
When there's conferences on.
well, it's not as simple as that. You've got to get money to go to them. That's my friend Hans Zinniger, the German guy that I worked with for life.
Hans.
Hans.
Yeah.
Well, he's retired. He can't afford to go to conferences unless someone subsidises him. Because he's looking after a wife who's got a job in Chile.
Yeah, but if
And
he's
you're
going to
not looking
present a paper, they usually pay the full cost,
No, they don't.
don't they?
No, not anymore. They used to. And I got the full costs and more. And
Yeah.
I was a lucky one. I mean, I got in and I got far enough up the pole that I got a proper retired person as like an
pension.
ex-policeman.
Yeah.
But it was a good one because I was
Yes.
not just one of the crowd.
Yes.
I had a responsible job, but it was totally superfluous to the actual monetary needs or food needs of the rest of the world.
Sure.
And most people don't want to know and can't follow the scientific arguments. It's not surprising because the astronomers disagree on it themselves.
Yeah.
They're just as bad as any other bunch of astronomers.
Well, I think even astronomy is changing. So
Well, it is. It's changing totally.
teaching has
And
changed.
teaching too. And teaching, but it's going in funny directions because it's different teachers get inspired by one or two aspects of whatever the job is.
Yeah.
And if they're lucky, they have some satisfying jobs and enjoy it. And if they're unlucky, they feel they're trapped in some terrible system which isn't doing things right.
Yeah, and it also depends on how supportive the principal
That's right.
is.
And whether you're in a private school or a so-called public school.
Yeah.
The public schools is complicated. Set up altogether, having the word have two opposite meanings.
Well, the public school is basically funded by the public, which is the government.
Now you mean the Australian public
The
school?
Australian public school
Not to
is,
be
yeah.
confused with the British public school.
No, the
So
British public school is, for a school to exist, it needed a charter. So it had to be debated in Parliament or approved by Parliament. That's why they call it a public.
Oh, wait, what are you talking about? Australian public school?
No, the British public schools.
So-
Like Eton was created by Henry VIII or something or rather.
Well, when he took over the Anglican
Yeah,
business, he wanted to be the Pope of the Anglicans. So
that's right.
he made himself that.
But the Anglican or the Protestant faith actually predates Henry VIII because Martin Luther was already espousing
Oh yes, of course.
an alternate
Yeah.
religion.
Yes.
And I assumed it was just Henry VIII just jumped on that bandwagon.
Well, he was on his own bandwagon.
Okay, let's see.
trouble is that the good people, the well-meaning people, themselves are diametrically opposed on that particular issue.
They are.
Because they don't. They think Muslims are uneducated peasants, basically, or intrinsically stupid. And then it's like black people in America.
Yeah.
No matter what enemy law passes, it doesn't actually mean that black people look like white people to white people who never got used to living with black people.
Yeah.
Or perhaps worse, the ones who are used to living with them and have no problems with treating them badly, because it's the way it's always been in the southern states.
That's how Donald Trump treated the visit of the Prime Minister of South Africa.
Yeah, well, he didn't.
And he
tried
just
to.
blamed him for the racism.
Yeah, but it didn't faze the black guy.
No.
He handled it very well, I thought, and he just pointed out.
Well, on camera he handled it well, but I don't know what the consequence of that confrontation would. I mean, he did it to Zelensky as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I don't trust Zelensky.
No, because he's an actor.
Well, they're all actors.
Give him one line and he can
They all
take it to the hill.
Yeah, well, that's right. But then all these famous actual actors are the same.
Yeah.
And they have disturbed lives, and they end up on drugs one way or another.
They do.
And when their days of acting are probably gone, a lot of them just fall apart.
Yes.
It's like members of the royal family who are only halfway up the royal family. They're stuck in no man's land because
Well, in particular, Andrew.
Well, he's the worst example in recent
He
times.
is the worst example.
But he was trapped as well. He had no choice. He lost now the king's younger brother.
Well, he made the choices in part because Edward is also in that family, and he didn't come like Andrew.
No, but Edward was the eldest, wasn't he?
No, it was the youngest. He's the baby.
Okay.
He's about.
So what's he doing with his life?
He's supporting the monarchy where he can, and he has a private company. He's running a private company of his own.
Doing what?
Films.
Making films.
Making films about the royal family.
Sort of true histories or
True
movies?
histories.
So
He digs up the archives and he presents things or artifacts.
Yes. Well, this is what's interesting with Portugal, because there were 4 brothers there,
Yes.
and the youngest one was Henry the Navigator.
Yes.
And he, in terms of world history, is more famous than any of the individual Portuguese kings.
Sure.
They all have funny Portuguese names, but apart from that,
Yeah.
many of them were not particularly distinguished.
They basically were, the king of Portugal would be Henry the Navigator. Hey, you explored the world, you mapped the world, you opened up the markets. Even the British started following you.
Yes.
And he contributed.
Well,
he did a lot.
Yes. And he had a good effect on the world as a whole. And even Jim here has shifted his ground in the last couple of months, in the last 6 months, in the last 2 years.
Right.
And he's not so worried as the rest of us are about the instability in the world, because he thinks that it's actually getting fixed, regardless of what the lunatics are actually doing in politics. And he argues strongly that the fraction of people who understand roughly what's going on and so on are not ill-intentioned.
Right. Okay. Well, let's see what happens. As they say, we live in interesting times. 2027 is the year which I'm looking forward to, maybe. because that's the anniversary of the communist regime in China. That's where Xi Jinping is supposed to reunite Taiwan
Yes.
with mainland.
Yes.
But if you look at the history of Taiwan, they actually didn't succeed as such. They were always a province of China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I believe that. And after all, the Norsemen were forever making connections north-south using the rivers in the middle of Europe.
Yeah.
And most of the rest of the big civilizations used the Mediterranean as their main way of moving around.
Yes.
And the animals tried to take his elephants across the Alps.
Yeah. Actually, what I found interesting is British history, or Britain's history. They don't teach much about Spain and Portugal.
No, they were arch rivals. For a while,
They were, but
and they got the Pope to divide the earth into
well,
left-hand
the
half.
religion and so forth.
It's just but all branches of Christianity.
Yeah.
And then the Muslims came along and made it much more.
Well, the Catholic Church tried to appease the Jewish, because the Jewish community accepts the Old Testament of the Bible.
Right, but that's the educated worldview of what happened. But it actually doesn't seem to count for much when the Jews are down and people get drafted into their armies on the opposite sides.
Well, yes.
That happens all the time.
Well, it's still
and you can't tell the
happening.
difference between an enterprising hero who's fighting for his country and a lunatic who's taking advantage of poor peasants by fighting wars and killing thousands of people.
Yep.
It's just...
Why are you traveling at 40 kilometers?
Yeah, I suppose.
Anyway. So last night was more of a working evening, was it?
Oh, it was continuous all evening. Christina and the others, there were three of the four
Yeah.
were going to Portugal, were all on the phone together and trying to work out what they're doing. And every time they booked, say, an Airbnb was the name of it.
Yeah.
They were using Airbnb. But the deal would fall through while they were working out which one to go and how much to pay and this sort of thing. And half of the things, there was obviously lots of other people planning trips.
Yes.
So suddenly a house that they were about to sign on a dotted line, and it suddenly disappeared. Someone else jumped in ahead of them and got it. And Paula did extraordinary use of the evening. She decided it was time that she didn't depend on Richard to do all the cooking in the house.
Right.
Because she's been very happy with him for 30 years or whatever since they got married.
Yes.
Married,
it's about 30 years. Well, 25, 26.
It's that sort of thing. Anyway.
26 years.
Well, what she decided was she was going to make macaroni cheese herself following a recipe.
Right.
And she found a good recipe and found all the utensils. And
right.
All the others were arguing about where they were going in Portugal, and Paula's not going to Portugal anyway.
No.
She learned how to make, and she followed this complicated recipe and using all my tools and equipment, and produced a huge quantity of macaroni cheese.
Oh, okay.
And she was really pleased because she figured that she should be able to prepare a meal. I mean,
yeah.
If anything happens to Richard, when he has to go to hospital or something, she's got to do something to keep the family alive.
Sure.
But she just held it as a sort of interesting experiment to see if Fernanda teaching herself to knit.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't afford to buy baby clothes.
Yeah.
And I've long ago stopped asking Fala to help me to repair old clothes that needed sewing, because she never learned to sew, because Fernanda never learned to sew.
She just goes to just goes to Sambini's and pick up something that is.
No, she picks up my old clothes and makes a terrible job of stitching things together on purely practical grounds. So, if I've got a failed zip on an old trousers or something like that, she's sort of a big job to make it strong and safe and practical, but not fixable. Because Fernanda taught herself by reading self-help books for foreigners.
Yep.
Portuguese thing called agenda, a big diary, and it had all sorts of recipes hidden in it.
Right. It's the equivalent of the Australian Women's Weekly.
That sort of thing. That's right.
I'm surprised Paula just didn't use Catherine's recipe for mac and cheese.
Well, I don't know. I mean, she just wanted to work out how to do it herself. And she found a good recipe.
Okay.
And it worked very well.
Good.
2 hours while the others were trying to sort out
2 hours?
we were more than 2 hours. No, they were at it, trying to book their Airbnbs. And they were all discussing it. And they were changing it. Christina was simultaneously on the phone to people in Portugal and elsewhere in the world. Scotland.
Yeah. And in between, I rang, and she was also speaking with Catherine to find out what she was doing today. Yeah. Unfortunately, she's working, and she couldn't. She's working at Petersham.
Paula.
Catherine.
Catherine.
Sorry, not Catherine. Heather.
Heather. Oh, okay. Well, Heather actually left the telephone conversations.
Right.
Eventually, before we finished, Christina was still going, and they nearly got it all sorted out, and then something fell through, and they go back to square one for a bit. And eventually, I decided that the only way is they are all adults, and it's their holiday, and they've got to decide what they want to see. And I got quite upset because I had been assuming that we were going back to the north of Portugal at the end, so that Amanda.
Right.
But Amanda's actually had a holiday in Portugal anyway. Since she was nearly adult. So it's not true that they only saw the family when they were babies, because we did all get to Portugal.
Yeah.
When they were teenagers or mostly past their teens. So it came right in the end.
Yeah.
But it's and I told her that I'll just treat this for me as a chance to explore bits of Portugal I never had time to see with Fernanda, because we always stayed up in the north.
In the north, yeah.
Because we wanted to keep in touch with them. But the other friends of Fernanda, she lost them all basically, because they just had different views of the world and what was right and wrong. And the classic one was one of the group of sisters who were very close and did things together. One of them won the lottery.
Oh.
And suddenly she got rich, and she had this pile of money, and she didn't trust her brothers and sisters to do the right thing.